Thank you. My name is Bakary Diarrassouba. Um, I'm currently at Google as a creative um, with the Google Creative Lab, working on a plethora of projects, one of which I will be presenting to you today. A little bit about myself. I am originally West African from the Ivory Coast. If there's any Ivorians in the room, c'est la Côte d'Ivoire qui gagne, toujours. And I'm so happy to be here and to have this opportunity to talk about some of the work that we've been doing. I will go ahead and press next. 1/3 of the world's languages are spoken in Africa, but less than 1% of African languages are represented online. So there's about 7,000 languages in the world, 2,000 of which are spoken on the continent, making it one of, if not the world's most linguistically, the most linguistically diverse continent in the world. And this stat like speaks for itself. So our project, the Griot project, is about how do we talk about languages and low resource languages, and I put those in quotation because oftentimes a lot of languages and on the continent are tabbed as low resource. But for this project, we wanted to challenge that notion and say that low resource does not necessarily mean non-existent like resources. I think we just need to get creative in where we look for those resources, depending on the language. And so, for the Griot project, it's an inclusive approach for gathering the data necessary to accelerate the viability of natural language processing for low resource languages, again, in quotation. We were taking a look at one African language here in particular called Bambara. So Bambara is primarily spoken in West Africa between the countries of Mali, Burkina Faso, the Ivory Coast, Guinea, and Bambara is a low resource language because there's not enough text available on the web to crawl the web, to find enough data to train and to build language models. But from our perspective, there's ton of language resources for the language available. They're just hidden in places that you have to get creative in order to uncover. The Griot project is a collaboration between Google Research and the Malian Natural Language Processing NLP community to create Bambara data sets through the traditional practice of oral storytelling. So if you're from West Africa, if you know anything about West Africa, you've probably heard of griots, where we call them locally jili. They're oral storytellers. An example of, I think there's like sayings in West Africa that like when a griot passes away, it's as if like a whole library has like burned down because they have so much knowledge that's been passed down from generation to generation. So for an example, there's a griot in my village. So when I recently visited my village, I went to the griot and I sat right next to him. He doesn't have these stories written down in a book or like anything like that, but it's been passed down by his father, who then passed it down by his forefathers, and so on and so forth. So we sat down and he told me about my name, like my last name, what does it mean, where did our people come from, and just like all of that stuff. So griots are great resources in local communities across West Africa. And so we saw that as an opportunity to partner with them to create language data sets. I want to play a short clip for you just to show us in action with the griots. We sat down with them. We recorded about 30 plus griots. They told us a bunch of stories that range from like the stories of from like a young small girl to like the great wars of the Malian like empire. So I'm going to play this video now. I'm going to press play. I'll let it load a little bit so you can hear the volume. I'm going to put myself on mute.
Kalambali, o de ka ca ni kalanni ye.
Jɔrɔmɛ ka ca yɛrɛlan wɛrɛ jamu na.
Afrique tɛ kɛ komi bamanankan.
E tagama cogo min ta nin tɛ tagama cogo de nin bila.
Ko n bɛ kɔnɔna kasi kɛ n ka jalaki kan. I kɔni mana kɛ diɲɛ baara o baara kɛ la, a jarila o, a ma ja i la o.
Bi ta bɛ ne ni n balakaw de cɛ o ye aw musow ye.
I hope that wasn't too bad from the stream end, so you could kind of like catch a little bit of the video. I'll just talk briefly about what you just saw. So as I mentioned earlier, Bambara is a low resource language, but there's a lot of language resources within that's hidden in the culture. And one of them is the griots. So we looked at oral storytelling as a viable resource for natural language processing. So we partner with an organization in Mali, Robots Mali, to kind of like help us with this project. They own the transcription and the translation piece of this work. So we recorded about 30 plus griots because Bambara is mostly a spoken language. Most people that speak Bambara don't actually write it down. So we thought we'll have the griots speak and then we'll transcribe everything that they said and translate it to Bambara, therefore giving us a data set that we can then use for automatic speech recognition. Let me see. So we actually released the data set in August through a series of posts, like this specific blog post, which is the title of this talk, Building Language Models One Story at a Time. So the data set has been released for everyone in the community to be able to enjoy, play with. As part of the project, we actually, through Robots Mali, work with PhD researchers, a PhD researcher at RIT, Alasera Tapo, who's writing a dissertation on Bambara. And so he actually used this this set for his ASR project, which I will be talking about a little bit like later. So you can find the open source set on like the audio files on Zenodo, and then there's a GitHub repository. So it's free license for everyone to benefit from, including folks here at Google, because we want to make our system that much better. But this project was more for the community, by the community. We felt that it was very, very important that all of our findings and like research and all of that was owned by the community. So the set is actually owned by Robots Mali. They open sourced it for all of us to use. So yeah, so that was like a very, very key point in this as part of this project. We also had a poster presentation at Deep Learning in Daba, like 2022. This is Sebastian from Robots Mali. He gave the presentation at that conference. And so now we got a bunch of rich knowledge from the culture, from the community. We feel that it's very important to give that same rich knowledge of the culture back to the community. So we're actually partnering with local organizations in Mali so that we can give them all of this, these beautifully crafted films, so they can showcase it to the local communities, so they can like learn from these stories, hear about these stories, and also just contribute. Another way we're gonna try to bring this project alive is through the Google Arts and Culture platform, where they've recently celebrated the country of Mali with Mali Magic, and we're working with them to see if we can incorporate it within that project. Thank you. I hope that I did justice to this project, because it's a project that we care very much about. Yeah, I'm excited to answer any questions if there's any.